My life was a 14 by 14-foot glass box perched 60 feet above the ground. I'm Silas. I'm a fire lookout in the deepest, most inaccessible part of the Cascade Mountains. My job is to sit in a tower, watch the horizon for smoke, and radio it in. It's a job for hermits, for people who prefer the company of pine trees to people. That was me. My world was silence, the smell of ozone before a storm, and the endless green ocean of the forest. I liked my coffee black, my radio chatter minimal, and my solitude absolute. Then Evan stumbled into my clearing. I'd been tracking a nasty summer thunderhead building over the eastern ridge all afternoon. The air was thick and heavy, the kind of static charge that makes the hair on your arms stand up. I was scanning the treeline with my binoculars when I saw a flash of bright, unnatural neon yellow down below. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Tower 4. I've got a hiker in Sector 3. Looks like he's off trail and moving slow. Storm's about 20 mics out. Copy, Tower 4. Keep eyes on him. If that cell hits, he's in a bad spot." 10 minutes later, the first fat drops of rain hit the glass. The hiker, Evan, had stopped moving. He was sitting on a log, huddled under a flimsy-looking emergency poncho. I sighed. My solitude was officially over for the night. I threw on my slicker, grabbed the first aid kit, and started the long climb down the metal stairs. By the time I reached the ground, the sky had opened up. It was a deluge. I found him shivering violently. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, surrounded by thousands of dollars of ultralight, brand-new camping gear that was currently useless. His face was pale, his lips had a blue tinge, and his left boot was unlaced, the ankle swollen to the size of a grapefruit. "Hey!" I shouted over the rain. "You can't stay here." He looked up, his eyes wide and terrified behind rain-streaked glasses. I think I broke it. I slipped on some wet shale." "You didn't break it, but you definitely wrecked it. Come on. We're going up." "Up?" He looked at the towering metal structure swaying slightly in the wind. "Up. Unless you want to get hypothermic down here. Let's go." Getting him up the stairs was hell. He was dead weight, hopping on one foot, whimpering every time he jarred the bad ankle. I basically had to fireman carry him the last 2 flights, his arm slung over my shoulder, my arm around his waist, hauling him up while the rain lashed at us sideways. We burst through the trapdoor into the tower cab, soaking wet and gasping for air. I slammed the hatch shut, sealing us inside the glass box. The sound of the storm instantly muffled to a dull roar. "Sit," I ordered, pointing to my cot. He collapsed onto it, shivering so hard his teeth were audibly chattering. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I'm an ornithologist. I was tracking a rare northern spotted owl pair. I got turned around." "You got lost," I corrected, stripping off my wet slicker. "You're lucky I spotted your neon jacket. That's the only smart thing you're wearing." I went into survival mode. I fired up the small propane heater. I grabbed a wool blanket and tossed it at him. "Get those wet clothes off," I said, turning my back to rummage in my footlocker for spare sweats. "Hypothermia doesn't care about your modesty." I heard him fumbling behind me. I pulled out an old gray hoodie and some sweatpants and tossed them backward without looking. When I turned around 5 minutes later, he was buried under the blanket, wearing my oversized clothes, looking like a drowned rat that had just won the lottery. He was staring out the windows. It was a hell of a show. We were at eye level with the storm. Lightning was flashing all around us, illuminating the churning gray clouds and the swaying treetops below in harsh, blinding bursts. Is it safe up here?" he whispered. "It's grounded," I said, grabbing the medical kit. "We're basically in a giant Faraday cage. It'll get loud, though." I pulled up a stool and sat in front of him. "Give me the foot." He hesitantly stuck his left foot out from under the blanket. It was ugly, purple and blue and swollen tight against the skin. "I'm gonna wrap it. It's gonna hurt." I worked quickly, applying a compression bandage. He hissed through his teeth, his hands gripping the edge of the cot, but he didn't complain. "You really shouldn't be out here alone," I muttered, securing the clip. "This terrain eats people who don't respect it." "I know," he said quietly. He looked at me, his eyes clearing a little now that he was warming up. They were a surprisingly warm, hazel color. "Thank you. Seriously. You saved my life." "I was just doing the job," I said gruffly, standing up to make coffee. We sat for an hour as night fell, the storm raging around us. The wind howled against the glass, shaking the entire structure. Every few minutes, a lightning strike would hit a nearby ridge, the boom of thunder so loud it vibrated in my chest. Evan was jumping out of his skin. Every flash made him flinch. He was trying to hide it, trying to be brave, but I could see the raw terror in the way he sat, rigid on the cot, his knuckles white on the blanket. A bolt hit a dead snag not 200 yards away. The flash was blinding, and the thunder was instantaneous, a deafening, cracking boom that felt like the sky tearing apart. Evan yelped and literally curled into a ball, pulling the blanket over his head. I looked at him. He was a city kid, an academic, trapped in a glass box in the middle of a violent electrical storm. He was completely out of his element. My irritation faded, replaced by a strange, grudging instinct to protect. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than I intended. I walked over to the cot. He peeked out from under the blanket, his eyes wide and panicked. "It's okay," I said. "It's just noise. The tower can take it." Another flash, another boom. He flinched again, his whole body jerking. I sat down on the edge of the cot. "Move over." He scooted back, making space. I sat next to him, our shoulders touching. I could feel him trembling through the thick wool of my hoodie he was wearing. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, embarrassed by his fear. "I hate storms. Even when I'm inside. Being up here, it feels like being inside the lightning." "It's intense," I agreed. "The first time I was up here for a real banger, I spent the whole night under the cot." He looked at me surprised. "Really?" "No. But I thought about it." He actually let out a small, shaky laugh. We sat there in the dark, lit only by the periodic flashes of lightning and the faint red glow of the propane heater. The storm was a chaotic, violent force just inches away, separated from us by thin sheets of glass. But inside the small square of the cab, it was quiet. I put my arm around his shoulders. It was an impulse, a gesture of comfort, like you'd do for a scared dog. He stiffened for a second, then he melted into it. He leaned his head against my shoulder, his breathing starting to slow down. He smelled like rain, pine needles, and the faint, nervous sweat of adrenaline. He felt solid against me, warm and real in a way my solitary life hadn't allowed for in years. We watched the storm together. The fear in the room was receding, replaced by a thick, heavy tension of a different kind. The air in the small cabin felt charged, like the atmosphere before the lightning struck. Another flash lit up the room, illuminating his face as he looked up at me. His hazel eyes were wide, dark in the dim light, and the fear was gone, replaced by a raw, vulnerable question. I didn't overthink it. For once in my life, I didn't analyze the risk. The storm was raging outside, the world was chaos, and the only thing that made sense was the man sitting next to me. I turned my body slightly and leaned in. He didn't pull away. He met me halfway. The kiss wasn't tentative. It was sudden and deep, and full of the pent-up energy of the last few hours. It tasted of coffee and adrenaline. His lips were soft, contrasting with the scruff of his beard. I felt his hand come up and grip the front of my shirt, pulling me closer, as if he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. The thunder boomed again, shaking the floor under us, but neither of us flinched. The storm outside didn't matter anymore. The whole world had shrunk down to this 14 by 14-foot glass box, the heat of the propane burner, and the solid, surprising weight of him against me. We pulled apart slowly, breathless. He rested his forehead against mine, his hands still clutching my shirt. "I thought you said this was just part of the job," he whispered, his voice a little rough. I lied. I murmured against his skin. "I don't think this part is in the manual." He chuckled, a low vibration against my chest. We stayed like that for a long time, listening to the storm slowly roll away over the mountains, the thunder fading into the distance. The sun came up a few hours later, turning the washed-out world a brilliant, glittering gold. The storm had cleared the air, leaving the view sharper and cleaner than I'd seen it all summer. Evan was asleep, his head still on my shoulder. I looked out at the endless green horizon, my solitude completely shattered. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like enough.